Amas Ganalo, Kesis Makonnen I, Kas Abotachin Haba. Hinatoche, Abatoche, Hitoche, Wandamoche, Damanadarachu. Amin, Amin. Xavier, Yetabarukachu. Yikarta, Ahonim, Amarinye Betam Tewahedo Alem, Selassie. Mokaralo Nagargin Zare Be-Ingaliz Alabang. Kesis Makonnen has asked me to come up here today and share the story of how my wife and myself find ourselves in the Ethiopian Tewahedo Church. Perhaps for the benefit of some of you born into the church, sometimes if something's given to you right away, you don't always appreciate it for what it is. This happens in the West all the time. Some kids get cars very early, they don't appreciate them. Some people are born into faith that they don't understand. So perhaps he wanted me to share this story so that you can know how difficult and what a long road it was for us being born in the West to find this faith and find this church, and how we reached the conclusion that this is where we need to be and this is where we will worship the rest of our lives. And thank God, today our daughter is baptized, and God willing, she will worship within this tradition the rest of her life as well. I certainly haven't been asked to stand up here today because I'm some textbook example of an Orthodox Christian. I'm far, far from it. This faith is very demanding, and I'm glad that it is so. It's going to take us the rest of our lives to get it right. And we are compelled towards Christ, which means we're compelled towards perfection. We're far from it, but we're compelled towards it. Houston, Texas, America, geographically and philosophically is about as far removed from Ethiopia and her holy tradition as one can be. But God's kingdom is much further from the kingdom of man than Ethiopia is from Houston. Yet, out of his love, out of his great love for us, he came all this way, took on flesh, and gave us a path for salvation. If I can read from 1 John. Meraf Arat, Kotor Sabat Eska Asrarat, right? 1 John. Actually, I'm going to read verse Kotor Zating and Asr 9 and 10. And this was manifested the love of God towards us, because God sent his only begotten Son into the world that we might live through him. Herein is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the propitiation of our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we ought also to love one another. It's an amazing thing that our God would take on the flesh of a human being. We have become lower than even the animals. And this is why he was born in a stable, I've been taught. It's an amazing thing that Kesis Makonnen I, Our Lady Virgin Mary, out of love, would be willing to carry the maker of all in her womb, would be willing to give her flesh so God could wrap it around himself. Also, he could die. This is an amazing thing that when you meditate on, it blows my mind constantly. I'm sorry, this is the third time I've been in front of this congregation, and it never gets easier. It's like a dream come true to even be amongst you all. And so to speak to all of you is very intimidating, but I'll do my best. A little bit of background on Fakirta and myself to help you understand how we find ourselves here. When Erica was young, you know her as Fakirta Mariam, When Erica was young, her father died. When you're a child and your parent dies, apparently this causes you to have a serious perspective on life. And you look at things differently than other children around you. You become serious and you think about what is God's plan for our life and what does life and death mean at an early age. Her mother did remarry a great godly man who has been a father both to Erica and myself. He was here for our baptism and he's here today. They were devout Catholic people, particularly devoted to our Blessed Mother, and they were involved in an organization called the Legion of Mary. The Legion of Mary did many charitable works in her honor and defended Mariam's place in Christendom. My wife found herself in both Catholic and Protestant schools at different times. She was even exposed to Orthodoxy at that age because they would visit different shrines of Mariam, and they visited one here in Blanco, Texas, a weeping icon. At that time, Erica corresponded with that monastery and received some literature on the Orthodox Church. This is a young age. So when we met one another, she brought already with her a knowledge that the Orthodox Church, even though we only knew about the Eastern Orthodox at the time, was older than the faith she had brought up with. She came also with a reverence and a devotion to the Blessed Mother that I thank her for ever bringing into my home. Myself, my parents are very devout Christians.